everyone, welcome back to Geeks Not Nerds Live. It's time for the fifth part of this year's multi-topic extravaganza. I'm your host, Captain Logan, and the wide-eyed crazy man behind me is Eric Holden. Also with us tonight on the panel is Steve Baxey.
Hello, everybody.
And the great and magnanimous Jackson Rasco.
How's everybody doing?
We're all great. Eric, how are you doing?
I'm doing good.
Are you good?
Good.
Tonight we're going to answer...
Trapped in a glass cage of emotion.
Tonight we're gonna... He's trapped in a glass cage of emotion. Tonight... That should be a song, though. That sounds like a good song. Anyway, I've never seen Anchorman, but that sounds like a good song. Anyway, hi, folks. Good to see you. Good to be seen. Tonight, we're going to answer your questions for the next hour. We're going to take some live questions throughout. We're going to do 3 pre-written questions in a row from the multi-topic announcement video. If you haven't written a question there yet, feel free to go there and do that. We're going to get through as many of them as possible. Like I said, we're on the 5th week, so we're going to do at least 3 more weeks of these, and we're going to cap it off at 3 more weeks. So we'll do 8, and if we haven't gotten all of them at 8, we'll save the rest of them for the next year. We'll try to do some videos out of them or something, but we'll try to run through these. We have been at a decent clip for us for the multi-topic. I guess it helps that we've been making these all hours instead of half hours and 45 minutes like Vince and I tended to do. So Rasco is going to watch the comments. Every 3 questions, he's going to pull a live question. So feel free anytime during the show to write a live question for us. And if you've been paying attention the last few weeks, try real hard not to write anything too close to questions we've had before. This first question tonight is from Leo Guy. And this one is... I feel like we've kind of answered this this year, talking about like superheroes we'd like to see in movies and stuff. But this is like a really specific, like, makeup. Oh, hold on, 2-year-olds down here. How you doing, Freddie? Okay. Anyway,
Come this way. Sorry.
I'll be back with you in just a moment. I need one of those cards that's like technical difficulties. Please stand by. You know, we just have some background music like ta da ta da. Okay, Eric's back. The first question, and this is more like a blue book paper topic, really, than a question for us to answer real quick. But Leo Guy asked, what would your ideal superhero movie be, i.e. ideal genre, director, character, and premise? And we do these entirely blind, so we have not prepared for this ahead of time. So I'm going to ask everybody as a lickety-split to try to do at least some of this. What is the great be-all, end-all superhero movie that has yet to be made for you individually, the superhero movie that needs to happen? Let's start with Rasco.
Okay.
Rasco, what would your ideal superhero movie be?
I'm going to go with, I want a question movie directed by Ridley Scott in like the vein of Blade Runner. That's what I want. That would be ideal.
Steve?
Okay, I'll get really specific because the question is really specific. And the answer will not be Age of Ultron, because I love Age of Ultron, but it's not that answer. So I would want a standalone, in its own universe, Iron Man movie that stars Matt Boomer as Iron Man, but he's playing him like comic book Tony Stark, where he's more serious. It's a really business-heavy movie. And the movie would basically be an adaptation of Haunted, but at the same time, it's taking things from the original Dennis O'Neil run. So it's Tony's in his company dealing with alcoholism, while at the same time, the Mandarin is using governmental technology to create super soldiers, kind of like Iron Man 3, but like more in the vein of what Haunted was doing with like eradicating the world and everything, and like more based in people Tony already knows, and preferably directed by someone like maybe someone like Oliver Stone, or someone like the guy that did Seven. I'm forgetting his name. I can't remember his name.
David Fincher?
Yes, Fincher. Yeah. Either one of those 2 guys.
You know, I told Steve not to prepare for these ahead of time. He's clearly cheating and not actually. I'm just kidding. Clearly, he's thought about that one for a while. Eric, do you have one?
Okay, so here's the thing. When you first said that, my immediate thought was the Question movie by David Fincher, in the vein of like Gone Baby Gone. So that's off the table. Maybe Shane Black Heroes for Hire. Let's go with that.
Oh,
That's cool. I gotta look up a director name real quick. I'm gonna go with.
Martin Scorsese.
There we go. Okay, I'm gonna go with a Spawn movie written by Grant Morrison and directed by Alex Proyas. Alex Proyas is the guy who did Dark City
and The Crow.
and The Crow. And I just
too, I think.
Did he do the second one also?
I think so.
Oh wow, okay. He'd be perfect for Spawn.
Alex Proyas could have made a pretty decent Batman movie back in the day too.
Yeah, I think so too. Yeah, cool. Boy, we answered that like we had a plan. It was amazing. Okay, the next question is from Logan Dodd. Oh, I love people named Logan. Bless you.
Thanks.
Has the reboot film? Good job. Good on you. Use the quotation marks. And I think still, even before I made that rule, has the reboot filmmaking strategy oversaturated the market? And do reboots rely too heavily on nostalgia than having their own identity and story? Now, this is a thing we talk about constantly on the channel, constantly bringing up reboots and remakes and all of that kind of stuff. But specifically, are we oversaturating? That's a thing we talk about a lot. And are we relying too heavily on nostalgia with reboots? Do you guys think that just by the very nature of rebooting as much as we're doing, I mean, there's obviously good cases for doing it in a vacuum, specific things. I'm running into this again.
Putting in a vacuum.
I'm putting Eric in a vacuum, right? Eric in a vacuum. But specific things, specific examples on their own, it makes sense sometimes to be rebooted. But when we're doing it so often, it makes sense that somebody would think, well, we're just cashing in on nostalgia, and that's all it's about. Let's start with Steve. Steve, you want to field this one for me?
Sure. So people have this more modern connotation where they think reboot as just a concept's a bad thing. I've never had that really. Hollywood in its golden age, as people would describe it, isn't the be-all end-all of constantly making original movies. Most of the best movies of all time are adaptations of something, remakes of something. It's not like we haven't been doing this since the dawn of storytelling. I don't think there is such a thing as an original story. I think everything is borrowing from something else and transforming it in whatever way they can for the time. So reboot as a concept isn't the problem for me. My problem is more so with the notion that we're not allowing time to pass. So yeah, you've got Amazing Spider-Man 2, which came out in 2014. And now Tom Holland is Spider-Man in 2016, and he's got a movie in 2017. I don't have a problem with rebooting Spider-Man. My problem is there's been literally no time to historically digest what the Amazing Spider-Man movies were before we just recycled it again. And so if you want to reboot or remake anything, go for it. Even I wouldn't really want it, but if you want to reboot The Crow and make another one, fine, go ahead. But you have to be able to do it in a way that understands where the original came from and that we've culturally moved far enough away from it that doing it again is warranted. There are some things that you don't remake simply because there's just nothing more to say. With things like comic books and franchise and stuff, there's always more you can add on, but it's always a matter of giving the audience time to understand these things in more detail. There are lots of movies that are panned when they first come out, and then 10 years down the line, they become cult classics. And we seem to lose that more and more as we start doing this reboot thing, because we think if it's not a hit initially, it'll never be a hit. And that's just not the way art works. Art lives or dies based on its historical power, not necessarily on one instance of how much money it makes.
Yeah, and that's what can be really rough about making commercial art. It's just because it's commercial art. Eric, what do you think?
I think for me, it all comes down to intent. One thing is, I feel like we need to be much clearer about the difference between reboots and remakes. I don't have a problem with remaking a movie, especially if that movie is based on a separate source material. It's when we take something that worked and we intentionally are rebooting it into a franchise when it was never that in the first place and maybe doesn't have the legs for that. I think if you really want to remake something, if you have a new take on something that's great, it's when we get all these movies that's Vacation. Can somebody make a vacation movie? I don't know. We bought RoboCop. Does anybody want to do something with RoboCop? I feel like it should. I think the ones that work are when it's really creatively driven and they really have something to say with it, or some new take on it. That's really all I got.
Yeah, and that's a lot of what I was going to say. So I'll just add on to that by saying I also think that there are properties that stand the test of time and they're updating. Like there's a reason that whenever we make another version of, say, A Christmas Carol, it's almost never in present day. And when it is, it's a drastically different kind of take on it, right? Like we keep retelling that story, but it's still that story. It's always set in that day. Why would you ever make Carrie in the 2000s? And then we made that and we watered it down, and it was as much of a remake of that other movie as it was another take on that initial source material. It is a remake before it's another adaptation, like a different kind of adaptation, and you'd only really understand what you were looking at if you knew that other material, because it doesn't really live on its own, but then it's also there because this is a thing that is in that like if we update it for people that don't know that original material, maybe we can get people to go see it, but then those people wouldn't really appreciate it because of what it is. And Poltergeist was that way too.
I think a lot of horror movie remakes in general. The Friday the 13th remake is, well, I mean, if you've seen the originals or if you haven't, but
Rasco, what's your take?
It's really funny because I actually just got back from seeing The Magnificent Seven a second time, which is a remake of another movie. So you have Seven Samurai, then you get Magnificent Seven, then you get a remake of Magnificent Seven. And I'm like the kind of person that gets really irritated more by sequels that don't need to exist rather than remakes of movies. Like the fact that the fact that they've waited so long and that they're making Blade Runner 2 bothers me more than getting a remake of a movie like Magnificent Seven, honestly. I guess at the end of the day, like I want to go into it, and if I feel like it's a reboot or a remake simply because the name would help this mediocre film sell better, that bothers me so much. But I came out of Magnificent Seven, and I'm honestly like, there's a lot of really good performances in that movie. There's some really cool action scenes. I mean, it's not like a great movie by any means, but it's not bad, and it's pretty entertaining. And I say if you go see a movie this week, you should see like Magnificent Seven, and that's a remake of a remake. So I honestly, I just, it's really just case by case for me. If I go and see a movie and I feel like the only reason it's made is because the name is recognizable, then that's the big no-no. But I don't know. It's case by case.
Yeah, and gets watered down. That's the thing I always worry about. The thing that I used to think would happen that doesn't seem to really happen as often as I expected it would once we got into as much of an onslaught as we have with remakes is people forgetting the original over a really watered down mediocre version that doesn't even understand that material. Like this hasn't really happened as much. When you get things like The Day the Earth Stood Still, nobody even remembers that got remade because nobody saw it. But even things that when people sorry, what?
I said, whoa.
But even the things that people remember happened just because they were kind of in our face and advertised real hard in popular properties like Charlie and the Chocolate Factory. That's still a thing where people, even the folks that liked that movie, and it did, I think, perform okay. People will talk about both of those, but we haven't forgotten the Gene Wilder version. What drives me crazy is when, at this point, is when I'll mention a movie and I am clearly talking about the original, and somebody goes, "Are you talking about the original or the remake?" Yeah. That always irritates me.
Yeah. And I mean, there are certainly remakes that have replaced the originals. I mean, in the '80s, we had The Thing, The Blob, and
The Fly.
Sure.
There's another one. The Fly. Yeah. And I think when people say the originals for those, they really mean the '80s ones.
Well, and that's interesting, and that's because many generations of doing this, 3 or 4. Can you think of any? Can any of you guys? I'm pointing at Eric because he's in the room. Can any of you guys think of anything that has done that in recent memory, where you have a movie like in the last couple of decades or just the last decade that, like, say there was a 70s or an 80s movie and we made such a better version that we've kind of forgotten that movie.
Gus Van Sant's Psycho.
Nothing's coming to mind. Right, yes, yeah. No, I only watch them side by side right now. That's
Casino Royale doesn't count.
Yeah, I figured it would, but Casino Royale is the third Casino Royale, so.
I'm not immediately thinking of anything. I just thought that might be an interesting thing to.
What about like
Now
Jungle Book?
I'm asking questions.
Yeah, I'll give him Jungle Book.
Yeah, like
Jungle
newest
Book?
Jungle Book movie is probably going to take over as like the definitive Jungle Book version, I would say.
That'll still be a thing, though, just because the animated one is a classic where people will talk about both of them in tandem,
Yeah.
right? Where like, when you bring that up, you'll have to specify if you're talking about that. But it will wipe out all those other live-action Jungle Books, of which there are 2 or 3 or 4.
Well, and Lord of the Rings has basically erased the animated films from the 70s.
Yeah, sure. But that's a live-action thing to the theater versus an animated
Sure.
thing that I think was probably... Well, it had to have been in a theater someplace, right?
Lord of the Rings was in theaters. I believe The Hobbit and the Return of the King are
Or direct-to-video. Okay, or TV, yeah. Yeah, because it wouldn't have been direct-to-video, because I don't think there was as much home video right then, yeah.
I'm not sure how many people saw this now, but like 310 to Yuma was a remake of a 50s movie, and no one remembers that, so that might count.
Oh, that would count.
That's true.
Yeah.
And then,
Well, and I imagine there's probably a lot of things where you would have to go do some research and be, oh, that was a movie 50 years ago.
I don't think a lot of people watch the old True Grit over the new one.
I was going to bring up True Grit as well.
Oh, that's a
Yeah.
good one too.
That one I think is kind of a toss-up and maybe arguable.
It's kind of more like the Willy Wonka thing, where like people are aware of both of them.
Yeah, except that with the Willy Wonka thing, most people lampoon the second one and prefer the first. Whereas with True Grit, I think a lot of people, even that like the original, say that they're really on par, and the second one, or the second version's just as good.
Yeah.
That's what I've heard people say anyway. I've only seen the remake. I've never seen the original. So
I think Fright Night's another
I can't
case
speak
where
to
like
that.
both of them are really good, so it's hard to say.
Yeah.
And these examples are the reason that it's hard for me to just straight up go, okay, let's quit remaking things.
Because you get stuff like Fright Night where it's a real under the radar, it wasn't super successful, but it is genuinely really good.
And that was the thing that I wouldn't have seen. Like I would have never, and I haven't gone back to the original Fright Night, but I would never thought to go back to Fright Night because I didn't even know that existed. And then that movie came out and somebody asked me to take them to. Eric, a movie that you and I, we should move on to another question. We have 20 minutes on this question. But a movie that you and I keep talking about that I think you could remake, even though I like it a lot, is Flatliners. I think you could totally do a Flatliners remake.
Oh, is that with Kevin Bacon? Is he in that movie?
Yes.
Yeah. Okay, that's
And,
Joe Schumacher directed that, I think.
Yeah, Joe Schumacher.
Yep, that's a Schumacher movie, yeah. Anyway, let's go ahead and move on, shall we, guys? Barry in OKC, if you could have a conversation with any one deceased person, who would it be and why?
Oh, God.
That's a great question.
There's always so many answers, right? Like I have a hard time thinking of just one.
I would want to talk
Freddie
to
Mercury,
Thomas
and I want
Jefferson.
to know what he thinks about culture.
Yeah.
Mine is Fred Rogers. I really want Fred Rogers to come back from the dead and respond to what the culture has turned into since he died 15 years ago.
That's Mr. Rogers, right?
Mr. Rogers, yeah, that's a thing. And also DeForest Kelley, because I didn't get to see DeForest Kelley before.
Well, you know what? And George Carlin.
Mhm.
Man, I don't even need to speak to the man. I just want to see him do stand-up live, but getting to talk to him would be even better. Same kind of thing.
Steve?
I'm debating between two. I'll probably
Just say Nietzsche. Just say Nietzsche.
Actually, I was gonna go with because this guy just died this year or last year. I would love to have a conversation with Umberto Eco. He's genius. I love all of his books. Name of the Rose, Foucault's Pendulum. He wrote a essay about Superman and how that character's symbolism is carried over from like ancient Greek mythology. He's got an essay about time travels in hyperspace, I think it's what it's called, or like travelers in hypertime or something like that, where it's just about like how art evolves through the decades, through things like museums. He was a really, really interesting guy, and I love everything he's written. I wish I got a chance to talk to him at some point before he died.
Rasco.
I say Thomas Jefferson, And the reason is that I would just, there's so
That
many
is a high
things.
school response, if I've ever heard one. That's like a junior in high school. Like, who would you like? I got to impress my teacher.
Well, it's really weird because like I would never say Thomas Jefferson, but there's just stuff that I need to ask him about that like there's things going on today that I just need to get his opinion on. Because everyone values what Thomas Jefferson has to say about everything so much that I just want to have the definitive answers to all of his opinions. That's what I want.
I have that a little bit with Ben Franklin, too.
I'd like to lure Edison into a conversation, then just beat him up.
Seriously, every time someone says something, they'll justify it with, like, Ben Franklin or Thomas Jefferson said this. So this, like, every time. So I just want the trump card. I just want it.
Quote, haters gonna hate Thomas Jefferson.
Quote, put the selfie stick down, Thomas Jefferson. Okay, Rasco, can we have a live question, please, sir?
Yes, we can. This is from Everything Geek, a.k.a. Hawk Flame. What is your take on the term Mary Sue? Do you think it's a term that is thrown around too liberally these days?
What do you think, Garrick? Is
I
this another it depends question?
no, well, it's one of those things where it depends, I guess it is.
It is.
On what they mean by Mary Sue.
Yeah.
Mary Sue was created, it means kind of self-insert character. That's kind of a fan fiction-y thing. It can be kind of annoying if there's just a character that's great at everything. I think the more common version of Mary Sue is just a character that's good at everything and has no it has no obstacles.
Everything's too easy for them.
Some people said, Reeve from Star Wars, which I kind of have a hard time disagreeing with when I thought about it. I think it kind of depends on the story. I mean, the Punisher is kind of a Mary Sue. He just shows up and shoots everybody and then walks away, and he's fine most of the time.
Batman is the ultimate example of this. But even with the I'm Batman thing, where he's able to get away with anything, and he just walks into a room, you're like, how did you walk through this 50-pound or like thousands of pounds of stainless steel? It's like, well, I'm Batman. We still will put him in very difficult situations to get out of, and often you'll have stories where ultimately there's a real conflict, and it seems like he got through a thing with ingenuity, right? Like it seems like a lot of Batman stories, the I'm Batman thing isn't usually the way the ultimately the problem is resolved. It's kind of just a thing to get the ball rolling much of the time. But yes, that can certainly be a big giant problem. I mean, when a true Mary Sue is a big problem.
Yeah,
I mean, that's why we have that.
I think it's kind of a
term.
case-by-case thing.
Yeah, I think so too. What do you guys think?
Yeah, I think like saying someone's a Mary Sue isn't necessarily an issue if the writer knows that they're writing a Mary Sue. Like if they're aware of how good at everything or how
the pieces and what kind of.
Yeah. So I don't know. Yeah, like if someone's just completely oblivious to the fact that they've written a character that is just like walking on water and just amazing at everything, and they like it just becomes kind of like a power fantasy for them almost at that point, is how I would see it from like an outside perspective.
Are we talking about the Bible? He said walking on water and great at everything. That's Jesus, right?
Yeah, the ultimate Mary Sue. So I don't know.
Yeah, but that story doesn't end with "Save the day, I'm done. I'm gonna go have a latte now."
That's why we need a reboot for the happy ending.
I'd argue that one works okay. But yeah, a real Mary Sue is the exact same problem as a character who is completely not proactive, and then everything. The world coalesces to them. It's exactly the same problem. It's a crunch, and it's not writing character driven. It's, well, we know the basic outline of what a story is supposed to look like. That outline happens regardless of the protagonist. Steve.
Yeah, I feel like you guys already kind of covered most of it. Like, I don't know, Mary Sue's as a concept are tough to talk about. I feel like it just depends on what you're talking about. Like One Punch Man, Saitama is basically a Mary Sue. He's literally the strongest person in the entire universe. He stops everything with one punch, and he at the end of every episode, he usually gets ideally what he wants because there's literally nothing that can stop him. But that's kind of the point of the story, and it really depends on what you're talking about and how much of that factors into the rest of the stakes for the piece and the themes and such. Like, if a character that's completely unstoppable forces you to have a harder time getting any sort of gravitas or emotion out of the story, then maybe that's a problem. Dragon Ball Z has this sometimes. But then sometimes it could be the opposite, where like there's a character that's having no physical experience because everything's easy for them, and so now there's your story. I don't know. I think it just depends on what you're talking about. I don't think it's an overused term. I feel like it's a term that gets conflated in too many different arguments.
Yeah, it's like the internet figured out what that was, and now we keep inserting it in place. It's like Deus Ex Machina. It's when everybody figured out what that was, and then we started calling things that aren't quite. That MacGuffins are that way too.
Oh, yeah.
Just all of these technical terms for easy story devices. I think part of the reason Mary Sue's been coming up a lot more lately too is because of this. Whether you think it's there or not, and this gets sticky, and I don't like to get political on the channel, of course, but whether you think I think this is happening or it's just a perceived thing, the idea of overcompensation for female characters, where you have a woman who is your lead, and because people are excited about a female character being in charge or being the main character, she's got to be perfect and great at everything because she hasn't gotten her due as much in a world that used to be perceived as more of a man's world. And so you have some people thinking that a lot of female characters are Mary Sue's now because they've got to all be perfect, because otherwise it's like it's sexist or something if women have to deal with conflicts in a story. I think that is a thing that's been, whether you think that's happening or not, that's the perceived thing. And
that's the thing with Age of Ultron and Joss Whedon, where like people had an uproar that Black Widow had a character arc and had to deal with something that was emotionally traumatic. Yeah,
I 100% agree with you on that one, Steve. But anyway, I want to tack that on. You guys ready to move on?
Actually, I have one more thought that I just thought of while everyone was talking.
Sure.
I actually think the best way to get around the Mary Sue thing that I think I've seen in a lot of things, I think Mary Sues are almost never a problem if they are not the main character. Because you see that a lot where you have a character that's perfect and the window in is through someone else's eyes. You know, Sherlock Holmes, I guess, would probably be the most obvious example.
Sure. Yeah.
Where makes that work better because you're not seeing through that character's eyes. I don't know. Just a thing that I thought while I was talking.
Yeah, that's a good point.
Although I don't know if Sherlock Holmes is a Mary Sue. He's deeply flawed.
I feel like he was less deeply flawed when he was written. I feel like opium was not an issue. It was just a vice.
Yeah, a lot of the flaws come later when people psychoanalyzed the character and wrote versions that address the deep flaws. Like the actual Conan Doyle stories tend to be really basic. Sherlock Holmes knows all, except for like 2 cases where he didn't.
Good to know. Let's move on. Tank Gunner, if you were in charge of the DCEU, oh boy, if I was, what decisions would you make in terms of the direction they go from now? I would fire Snyder and call in Bruce Timm. So that's not what I'm saying. That's Tank Gunner. Sometimes I'll say a thing. I'll like read the end of a question and I'll think, I gotta make sure everybody knows that wasn't me just tacking a thing on. But anyway, we've been talking a lot about the DC Extended Universe with these chats, so we won't take too long on this. But just generalize in 1 or 2 sentences. What is a big thing you guys each think should change? I feel like maybe we've kind of done this already. What is the general direction you think we should be going on now? So what was not working? What's the direction we should move forward now? Let's start with Steve this time.
There's so much.
Yeah.
Getting rid of Zack Snyder, I think.
Can we just fire Snyder for all of us? Just
yeah.
We're all gonna leave.
We're in agreement. We're in agreement with Tank Gunner. We can move on now.
Yeah, Zack Snyder goes is a big thing. Okay. After that, though, I think the big thing that they need to do is they need to shut down their list of movies for like the next 10 years. I think they need to make a movie and deal with that movie. And even if it's by committee, like shop a movie for a couple years, and then based on that, allow the success or failing of that one movie to drive them forward, as opposed to making every movie a checkpoint for the next. Marvel started that way, and now they've gotten to this point where it's almost become a serialized thing where every movie is just the next chapter. But DC wants to do all of that really, really quickly, and that it's difficult to pull that. It's not impossible, it's just difficult. So instead of having like Wonder Woman's coming out and Justice League's being made, and they've got a Shazam movie apparently they keep trying to work on, and a Flash movie and an Aquaman movie, forget all that. Just make Justice League, see what happens with Justice League, and depending on what people latch onto, make another one.
Rasco.
I think that I think they need to stop trying to make their universe cohesive with itself, which sounds like the opposite you would want to do. But like, James Wan is directing Aquaman because they think James Wan can do a Snyder, that he can try to emulate Snyder. I'm like, that's got to be why they picked James Wan to direct Aquaman. He's a very atmospheric, visual kind of, just he's that's what he's known for. That's James Wan. It just feels as if they're trying to pick people that they know can work in like this Snyderverse, which what they need to do is, there is no Snyderverse. Aquaman should be almost hard to believe that it even takes place in the same universe as like Superman. And I want Batman to be this like incredibly dark, stylistic, noir type movie. And I just want them to be so drastically different, and not try to hire directors that they think can do like a B version of Snyder.
That's great. Eric.
I think, are we assuming that we still get the two movies that we know are already made, Justice League and Wonder Woman? Is it post that?
Yeah, it's post that. And we know there's a Batman movie that's in development, so that has to still happen.
Well, and
beyond that, I think all eggs are kind of in the air.
I keep that. I would focus, like, out of the gate moving forward, Batman, Superman, Wonder Woman. We need to get those right before we move forward. They're going to have to spend some money, because at this point, people don't trust them. I would get genuine, acclaimed, talented people to do Superman and Wonder Woman. And not someone that has made a couple of movies in the past couple of years that have gotten some acclaim. I think they need to get names.
You're right, because we already have that with Batman now.
Well,
like that's the kind of clout that you like what Affleck has now is the clout you're.
Oh, and like David Ayer came on, but David Ayer wasn't like a name.
Yeah.
I would give Superman or Wonder Woman to David Fincher. I think he's a name, like a real name. I don't know who I would give the other one to, but I think that's what you do to fix this. Is at least for the first couple of movies, moving forward, you need to get people making your movies that your audiences trust.
Yeah. Also, I'm sorry. Continue, Eric. Go ahead.
No, that was it.
Oh, I was just gonna say. Also, like, don't feel pressured. They need to stop feeling pressured to make every single movie big. And I don't mean just like big in the sense that like, oh, the world blows up, so it's a big movie. I mean like even like Dark Knight big. Like honestly, I would love a Batman movie that takes place over the course of a single night, and it's a really just small street level thing. That's what I would want. And I think if they did that, it's a safer investment of their own money at that point, because that wouldn't cost more than like $50 million, honestly, if you did like a street level Batman movie that's just like about a single really interesting investigation. That's like they can play it safe and also take artistic risks by doing things that like that, where it's an artistic risk, but it's also financially smart.
Yeah, taking risks doesn't mean being an idiot and jumping into a manhole where you don't know where the bottom is, right? Like, you still want to be strategic about it. Rasco, I love everything you said. I mean, I'm with Eric and Steve too. You guys all said great things, but I'm latching on to Rasco because of what you were saying about these movies not having to all feel like they're in the same universe, even though they are. Because I mean, obviously, Marvel's doing really well with that. Where you've got different kinds of parts of the world, almost different worlds that all exist in the same universe. We need to stop jumping the gun and trying to make every movie not just tonally the same, but pretend like everybody wants the same things in every superhero movie. Wonder Woman needs to be allowed to be, whether it's good or bad, whatever it is right now, or whatever it was before Suicide Squad came out. Like, they need to not react at all to Suicide Squad in how they release Wonder Woman and how they edit it and how they put it together, the way we did with BVS. I think that's really important. I would love to see what one of these is more pure to whatever the original intention was, because all of them so far, I think even maybe Man of Steel, that one's tough to call, but at least the two after Man of Steel have clearly got like super mixed up and jumbled and are puzzle pieces or puzzles with pieces in different places now. Rasco, with to tack on to something you said earlier, what they're basically doing in trying to compete with Marvel on exactly the same level without getting there is they're not allowing themselves to graduate to things that they are attempting that they're just not ready for. As you were saying, the analogy I would use is they are freshmen trying to take senior level courses.
Yeah.
And that's kind of their main problem right now. They're biting off more than they can chew.
Yeah, and you know the thing with the reactionary nature of DC right now, it's almost like it's like if they were like a chef and they're like bringing out like the appetizer and they're like, oh, it's too spicy. So then like in their next dish that's completely unrelated, they take the spice out and then it could ruin that. It's like, you don't say your pizza may have been soggy. That doesn't mean you need to make sure that your like chicken breast is dry. Like they're like changing the ingredients to different things.
That's a great analogy.
It's really good.
Thank you.
Yep. And that's why Rasco's a panelist now. Let's move on. Mind Probe. What is your favorite medium for storytelling, disregarding the genre or quality of the story it's used to tell? So when we say medium, are we talking
I think it's movies
and comics
novels,
and
music?
I don't know how to put one over the other. They're all there for different things for me.
Can you read the question one more time?
I mean, like, I want to say just because, but I don't think it would be fair for me to say that. Like, it's hard not to want to say comics just because it's a thing I'm really passionate about, but I'm less passionate about movies and TV shows and stuff just because the whole world loves those already and I don't have to argue them. Comics I have to constantly apologize for and argue for, and so I've developed this passion that I probably wouldn't have if I lived in Japan where everybody reads comics. It would be innocuous. Just I read comics, even if I appreciated the differences between that medium and other mediums. Do you guys have a favorite medium?
Yes,
I do. Go ahead. Comics. I think it's the perfect in between film and prose. I think the great benefit that comics have over film, whether it be television or actual movies, is the absolute no budget constraints. I think that's immediately what makes comics a superior medium for me watching it.
And of course the novel has that as well, but you're saying if you want a visual medium.
Yeah. And then over the novel is that you do get you get the visualization. It's kind of the best of both worlds. It's kind of in between. You know, you can get inside the characters' heads like you do with prose, and it cuts out my least favorite part of prose, which is explaining anything that doesn't need to be explained, which most writers do on some level. I don't even know what the grass looks like. I can see it.
Yeah.
And I like how much story you're able to tell in such a short amount of pages. You can get a story in 6 to 12 issues that's as complex as anything you would get in a novel and as character driven, but it'll take you 2 hours to read it.
Well, I'm such a short story guy. I'm in love with any 22-page comic book that emotionally resonates with me or makes me laugh out loud or whatever it is in 22 pages, and I never have to read anything else. I think that's hard. I think it's not as hard as a lot of writers make it out to be. But I think that's real comic artistry. I mean, and obviously long form can be really hard and impressive too. But my thing with the short story has always been, if I'm writing a novel, I can get away with some extraneous words that I wouldn't need otherwise. A short story, every word counts. And it's like that with the 22-page comic.
And I also, I don't think there's anything I like as much as, a good like 60, 100 issue run in comics where it's just all one story.
And that's why I love good television shows.
Yeah. But there's no breaks. There's no season breaks. It's just, I love it.
Yeah, but arguably, you look at something like Breaking Bad, and it does feel like just chapters, and it hardly has season breaks. I mean, like it does, but not in the same kind of way. Let's go to Steve. Steve, what's your favorite genre? He can't do it either.
It's medium. It's not genre. It's medium.
Medium. Yeah.
It's tough. Maybe this is just how I feel right now.
In some circles, those words are interchangeable. Sorry. Go ahead, Steve.
I think it just depends on like what I'm doing right now, because right now I'm working on a paper about this, so maybe this is why it's in my head. But I think comics are probably the best, ignoring the stories being told and thinking about them purely as a structure. Like Eric already mentioned, you guys already mentioned like everything with like the short form, long form, the way you write in comics and all that. But like even more than that, the notion of panel structures and grid layouts and the idea that a story and imagery and emotion and politics can be conveyed through the way a story is laid out is a dimension that I don't think any other medium is really capable of. And I think it says a lot about like I think there's a really good metaphor in that too. Like the Omega Men does this, where regardless of what's going on in the world, everyone's always going to be getting it through some filter, whether it's what they read online or the books they read or the news they watch. And so comics already have within them built into this assumption of the panel grids are showing you something in a very specific way and in a very specific cut, and I think that matters a great deal. Omega Men, I think part of the reason that book is so good is it plays with those panels. Like issue 9 of Omega Men, every panel, it starts with a 9-panel grid. Every page you lose 1 panel until you get to the center where it's a 2-page spread. And then after that, you gain 1 panel back until you get to the end and it's a 9-page grid again. And part of what that's there for is not only the pacing, but also for the gravity of the situation, that everything is literally ripping itself apart, but it's presented in the most organized way possible. It's systemic chaos. And I think that ability is something we don't play with enough, but it makes comics intellectually, maybe artistically, just so much more unique than anything I've seen in film or music or television. Like there's nothing quite, you can't equate panel structure to anything. You can equate good film imagery to a good panel. You can equate a good TV show to like a good run, or like good music to like poetic writing styles, but like panel structure, I don't know what that translates to.
Yeah, you're right. There's nothing in film or prose or anything else that can equate to like J.H. Williams III's layouts on Batman and Batwoman.
Exactly. Like it's a very different thing. Like the whole page is arguably more important than just a single panel within it, and you don't get that anywhere, I don't think.
Yeah, Steve, that is the best argument, because I've been trying to come up with one for years. The people that I've talked to that say, they didn't grow up with comics, I can't get into comics because I'm a film person, and they feel like I'm reading storyboards and I don't have the real piece. I'm waiting for the storyboards to become to become the piece, and you just hit on the best possible argument against that, which is, well, they could be used as storyboards, but then what if storyboards were an art form? What if you could communicate something through the way those boxes are laid out? You can dramatize in film Death of Superman, but you can't equate the same thing with those panel layouts where, as we get to Superman 75, we keep dropping them out to the point where it's just full page spreads all the way through. And that's a thing that like always really hit me in a place where like I noticed it happening but didn't realize what I was looking at until I really studied it. And you can't really, that's not translatable. You can't really put that on the screen. And a page of panels, if they're laid out in an meticulously planned out way, in an artistic way, that is an art all by itself. Like that can be a piece of art all by itself. I don't think we print enough. We've been printing a lot of covers lately as posters. We don't do it enough with full pages of comics. So we'll do it with a panel. Why not do that with more full pages of take all the word balloons out and just have the panel layouts? Why don't we do that?
We really should. I mean, I feel like there is just really good examples of 5 or 6 panels on a page that are absolutely gorgeous. Like the page in the McLean Late Ironman issue where Tony is giving up alcoholism, the way that's sequenced without any of the panel gutters and the way it moves is really interesting. And then the final panel, the final page of Omega Men #9 is Kyle Rayner getting his White Lantern ring back, and every panel, every one of the 9 panels has something from every Lantern group, and the panel is laid out so it's one image broken up into 9 boxes, but every individual box has its own meaning. And that's just gorgeous. And I don't think we do that much anywhere else, and having that as a poster would be fantastic. I'd love that over like a film frame.
It's also just incredibly efficient sometimes, where instead of having, for instance, what you would do in a movie where we need to see something up close real quick, where you'd have an insert shot in comics, we can just do that in a little panel, like right under the panel, in between panels. Like you can use your real estate and your time more effectively.
Well, and Alan Moore's talked about how
you see Sorrentino do that all the time.
And Alan Moore's talked about how you can set things off and pay things off. Set things up and pay things off in a way in comics that you can't, specifically in film, where, and I'm sure most people have this, when something's revealed on a page and it's like a visual thing, you flip back a couple of pages to see, oh, did he have a ring on his hand the whole time? And then, that kind of thing. Oh, do they actually draw the panel where somebody grabs something out of somebody's pocket? That's something you can't do in movies.
You have to watch the whole thing again before you appreciate all that foreshadowing.
And with a lot of that visual stuff, you can't do it in prose without drawing attention to it.
And I've argued this with people where they're like, well, you can rewind. I'm like, who does that?
There's an issue of Morrison's Multiversity where it's basically Watchmen in reverse. And when you get to the middle of the book, there's a character explaining to you, flip back a certain number of pages, something's happening, flip forward a certain number of pages, something's happening. And the ability to flip back and forth becomes a device within the narrative, and that's genius.
Rascal, I'm sorry, you haven't weighed in on this at all, and we got to move on. But do you have anything to add? This was the most thorough Cap, Eric, and Steve answer.
Well, I've got to represent my medium because I've got to represent.
Yeah, what's your medium?
Okay, so the medium that I choose is film. That's undeniably for me.
Hip hop, right?
It's hip hop.
Yeah, hip hop. No, but so film for me is the medium that I'm most passionate about, and it's for a lot of reasons. So, for starters, I love the idea that in the world we live in, a bunch of guys that are adults and professionals get in a room and they decide that it's a good use of millions of dollars to create a giant like robot battle in a desert and like film that, right? I think that that's awesome, and that's ridiculous. That
no, because the one that comes to mind was terrible.
Yeah, that's a terrible example. But
the only giant. That's the only one I can think of in a desert. And no, I'm sorry, go ahead. That's not a great thing.
I absolutely love that. I guess movies, they're the canvas size of film is one of the things I like about it the most. I think that, and no movie is absolutely, like, movies aren't necessarily 2 hours long, but that's kind of like the average, and then they either shorter or longer than that by a little bit. And that canvas size is just, I really like that as a length for a story. Film encompasses all other art forms in the way in which you create it. So you have artists there that are doing concept design. You have people there that are doing textiles, who are making costumes. You have actors. You have people like directors who don't have to specify in anything. A director doesn't have to be any one particular thing. He's just the lens at which all of these other forms of art are focused through that creates a movie. I love that the director is pretty much actively trying to play you the entire time. The director is pulling a trick on you. He wants you to feel exactly the way he wants you to feel at whatever moment in the film it is. He's literally the entire time he's playing you. And I think that's really interesting, and that sounds like it would be fun to do. Also, editing. Editing is something that people don't, I guess, think about when they go back to like movies like Scott Pilgrim. Scott Pilgrim's such a funny movie because of the editing. 90% of that movie's comedy comes from just how they cut the scenes together. And editing is something that doesn't exist in any other art form in the way that it does in movies. Like, you can go back and edit a book that you've written, but like the editing itself of the book won't make it funnier necessarily.
Yeah, it's what creates that pacing.
Yeah.
And one of the things that's difficult with comics is that you don't have line delivery. And you see comics all the time, of course, trying to be movies where if you don't have that person's voice in your head, even if it's exactly the way they would deliver, and we do everything we can with words in balloons and sizes and colors and bold and italics, just everything we can do to create line delivery. But yeah, at the end of the day, outside of a camera, you don't have that.
Well, and you know, the rule for comedy is that's all about timing. And that's much harder in flat, you know, written word.
Yeah, that's why so much comedy and prose is in narration before it's in dialogue.
Yeah.
The crutch I always used.
Movies also have music, which is another thing that that draws me to movies in particular, is because I really appreciate just a score that I can't get out of my head, and also the experience of watching a movie. Like, there's nothing like when you leave the theater after you've just seen like an amazing movie and you walk outside and it's all bright and you're like, and you're just like, oh wow, that was an amazing movie. Like, there's just that feeling of actually going to the movies that I also love. And I love how so much power goes to one person. You have millions of dollars and a whole set of people that are just trying to create the vision that one guy is telling them about. He's explaining his vision and everyone else is just there to make what he wants happen. And I love that dictatorship that exists in the film industry. I don't know.
There's like a different sense of community that comes with working in a movie. Like there's a very different like social aspect of like, this is how studios work. This is how laws in different filming sites work. This is how technology works. Like, film as a production is always in communication with everything else, which certainly is a big plus for it, because it's allowed to grow and adapt in a way that like writing comics in a bubble really isn't.
Well, it's funny because I seem to hear, for whatever reason, the phrase intrinsically collaborative associated with comics before I do film. That seems backwards, right? Like, there's a lot of people who can make a comic book all by themselves and do all of it. It's a lot harder to do with movies. It's not like it's never been done, but like, you know, unless you're playing every character and doing everything by yourself, nearly everything that's put on film, even if it's 5-minute short film, is going to require at least one other person. Like, usually you're not going to make a film all by yourself. There's a lot of comics that are done by that way. So I was wondering about that. I always hear that. Intrinsically collaborative. I'm like, really? Like, inherently collaborative. I'm like, I don't know. Okay, I'm going to answer this question real fast, and you guys can chime in on whether or not you think this is a good idea, or you guys might want to review something like this. But Sean Sack, this is interesting. Cap, are you interested in reviewing a William Shakespeare movie on Rewind United, such as Orson Welles' Chimes at Midnight? There are a couple that I would probably be interested in tackling down the road if I went back and really studied my Shakespeare, because it's been several years now. But the big one is, because I hear people back and forth on whether or not this is a good movie. It's the Hamlet that the guy who directed Thor did.
I love that
Branagh. Yeah, I loved it too. And then I heard, and then well after I saw it, I heard a lot of people talking about how pretentious and long and dull it is.
Well, because it's the play.
No, I know it is, but I hadn't seen it in a while, and I was like, maybe I was wrong about that movie. And I also haven't seen the Shakespeare movie that Whedon did.
Much Ado About Nothing.
Oh, I've seen that.
Much Ado, yeah.
It's very interesting.
I haven't seen that yet.
Yeah.
So anyway,
I would probably stay away from reviewing Shakespeare stuff just because I would feel uneducated on that subject.
I had to write enough about Shakespeare back in college that I feel like I could probably kind of get away with it. But I wouldn't pretend like an expert. I'd just be like, there's this movie in front of me. That's how I get away with everything. I'm like, I'm just talking about this movie, okay? I don't have to talk about it. It's just this movie. Anyway. Okay, Rasco, could you give us a live question?
Yep. This is from...
we've only got about 5 minutes left on the clock. Go ahead.
All right, this is from Johnny Torch. Today is Christopher Reeve's birthday. If he were alive today, what kind of role would you see him playing in the MCU? I.e. Keaton as Vulture.
Is this pre or post accident?
Because boy,
Yeah.
I don't.
That's interesting. I don't.
Because there could be some really interesting things on both sides of that, right?
Yeah, like that.
Yeah,
changes,
you're right.
That changes what my answer is.
Oh boy, I don't know. Now let me just say that because Christopher Reeve was so interesting about the way he chose roles, I wouldn't see this as a thing that wouldn't have happened. Right? Like, I just want to throw that out there. That like, if he was still around, this is a thing that totally could have happened.
Mm-hmm.
If we're talking his accident never happened, I think Reeve would make an amazing J. Jonah Jameson. Because that's not a thing he's ever done, and seeing him play so much against his nature would be fascinating.
Yeah, we have to age him. You know, we have to look at what he would look like now.
Yeah, it's tough to say. But I don't know. I feel like that would be
because I don't even know what Christopher Reeve without accident looks like in 2016.
Yeah.
Boy, this is stumpy. That's a great question.
Yeah, no, that's a really good one. We should have done that with less than 5 minutes.
I know. I'm trying to come up with something really interesting. I mean, part of the problem, of course, is that so many things have been cast now.
Yeah.
But it's hard not to want to go to more Spider-Man villains. Mysterio.
You know, he would have been a really cool Adam Warlock.
Yeah,
sure.
I could see that. Sure.
Especially since Adam Warlock is kind of space Jesus, and we played with that metaphor a little bit with Superman. It might be interesting to see him play an even more kind of cosmic Jesus-y kind of character.
Maybe Marvel if we had done that, but that's kind of on the nose.
But he would have been a little old for that.
Yeah, but I think he's a little bit old for Warlock.
Yeah, you might be right.
That's why I said Mysterio. I could kind of see that, but then you wouldn't want a glass dome on his face the whole time.
Vulture. We would have Batman and Superman playing the Vultures.
Both of them, right.
Vulture Red and Vulture Blue.
Hobgoblin. It's just
I have no idea.
Say names of villain. Christopher Reeve as Carnage. Yeah.
Baron von Strucker, he could have done that.
Yeah. Yeah, but that guy was good for the 5 minutes he was on screen.
He was all right. Yeah.
The Mandarin.
It'd be fun.
The president. Just whoever
From
the
Iron
president
Man
is.
3.
It's Christopher Reeve.
You leave him alone, sir.
Wait, what?
The president in the Marvel Universe.
Oh, yeah. Well, I don't know.
The worst news day every day.
He could lose his next term. I don't know how many terms he's served. He could be done.
William Sadler. His name's William
Sadler, yeah. And I love Sadler.
Yeah, you leave William Sadler alone. He will be president forever.
I didn't say replace Sadler. I'm just...
Christopher Reeves might be, but no one will replace William Sadler as president.
Well, folks, we are we don't really have enough time to answer another one, so I think we'll go ahead and call it quits here. Thanks a lot for watching. Sure appreciate it. Good to see everybody here and answer some questions for you. Next Sunday night, we'll do it again, 8 p.m. Central Time, and join Lo and I tomorrow night for New Comic Book Late Night, where we'll be counting down our top 3 favorite books from last week and talking about books that we are excited about for the coming week. It was a pretty sizable week last week, and I've only read a couple books, so excited to read the rest of those and talk about them with you tomorrow. Thanks again for watching. We sure appreciate it, and lots more videos coming your way this week on Geekvolution, and I'm working on some written stuff. Should have, fingers crossed, rewind for you this week. Also, I guess this will be the first time that I mention this. I've talked about that this is going to happen, but just to confirm it, working on the preliminaries for the sequel to Spawnia right now, and that will drop in the first week of November. So that's all I am prepared to tell you about right now, but I'll let you know about the theme and other things about it soon. So anyway, thanks a lot for watching. I'm Captain Logan, and this was Eric.
I'm Eric.
And are you sure?
I am Eric.
Okay, that's Eric. This is Steve Baxey.
Good night, everybody.
And Jackson Rasco.
Get out of my face.
And I am your face.
Saying good night. Good night.